What is the most obscure Pokemon game ever made? I've been playing this franchise for years, trying things from mainline titles, spin-offs, games unreleased in the United States, ROM hacks, fan games, and most recently, NES ports of Pokemon Yellow, as well as Ruby and Sapphire, made by Chinese developer studios. In my quest to find more of the most obscure Pokemon creations made by mankind, I'm delving once again into the bootleg bag of fun by doing a hardcore Nuzlocke of Shenzhen Jinkota Technologies' NES port of Pokemon Platinum. My only question is, will this game function? I just don't want a repeat of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, where the Hoenn Dex is completely coded to just be the Kanto National Pokedex. Find out more by checking out that video in the iCard on the top right hand corner of your screen, but I digress. Make sure to subscribe to the channel as we're around 6,800 subscribers away from my 2023 goal of 200,000, like this video, and leave a comment below with what other crazy obscure Pokemon games you'd like to see in the future. But with that, let's delve into this massacred world of Sinnoh to see what works, what doesn't, and what's been cut entirely. Just for a bit of backstory to this bootleg's creation, this NES port of Pokemon Platinum doesn't seem to have a concrete release date, as Shenzhen Jinkota isn't exactly the easiest company to research for in English, and these games of course are bootlegs and float out onto the market without much of a buzz around them, as to not raise as much ire as they can. Despite the lack of copyright laws in China when it comes to foreign properties that don't have a presence in the country. Though that, along with the wide shift to PC gaming and the mobile gaming market, would change within a few years, hence why this is the last generation that ended up getting NES ports instead of Generation 5. But wait, why would I say ports? Well, that's because Pokemon Diamond and Pearl are also technically ported to the NES as well by the same company. But the only differences include a change in title screen, with Voltorb, Staryu, and Chansey being featured on Diamond and Pikachu and Raichu on Pearl, as opposed to just a singular Arcanine on Platinum. I guess even in China, the appeal of Generation 1 Pokemon was far superior to many newer ones to attract as much of an audience as possible. The only gameplay change I noticed, though, was your choice of starter, as Diamond starts you with Piplup and Pearl with Turtwig rather than actually giving you that choice. But since this is Sinnoh, I'm of course going with Platinum to get Chimchar and therefore an actual fire type. I don't trust this game to adhere much to the Platinum Expanded Pokédex, so I'd rather not be saddled with only potentially getting a Ponyta, and maybe even missing out on it for like Machop or something and not being able to get a fire type. Starting out is the same progression as Platinum, getting the intro talk with Professor Rowan, Barry tries running into the grass before getting a Pokemon, and we receive our starters without a choice, only to engage in battle immediately. There's no reason to use my second attack here, so I just hit Barry's Piplup with a barrage of scratches, KOing it with 5 of them while only surviving at 2 HP to win the fight. Hopefully that is the closest fight we have in the whole run. Now, thankfully, it seems like this game's much improved in comparison to the Ruby and Sapphire ports, where these Sinnoh Pokemon actually have their own attributes and learn sets from the original game, rather than just being copy and pasted Kanto Pokemon from Gen 2. So I'll at least have less of a problem trying to match up weaknesses and resistances when it comes to this run. But of course, with Pokeballs in hand, we can start getting some encounters. First up, Verity Lakefront has Starly, always a great Pokemon to have, especially when we get access to close combat. Route 201 has Bidoof, which unfortunately is just shy of evolving before Rourke, so we won't have access to Water Gun beforehand, but hopefully our wide array of upcoming encounters will help. Route 202, though, unfortunately doesn't give me Shanks, rather it provides Kricketot. And that's not the biggest loss in the world, though I'm sure Luxray would be quite the nice Pokemon to have later on. But with them all in the party, it's time for some grinding. Once again, I need to express that the grinding sessions in these bootleg games suck, just because I have no access to rare candies and can't accelerate the video making process. Hence why this video is coming out a few days after when I wanted to put it out. Nor are there any EVs to gain from this, so it's not like I can explain some semblance of math to you and why I'd go for exclusively level 2 Starlies or something like that. It's just bash your face into the wild Pokemon until we get to around level 9, though it is quite frustrating that Bide also does not function in this game. So Kricketot is completely useless until it evolves into Kricketune at level 10 and actually gains an attacking move. Route 202 isn't a problem outside of that though, so I'm able to clear on into Jubilife, chase Barry onto Route 203, then grab a few more encounters like Burmy on Route 204, which sucks since I really would have liked to get Budew for Rourke, and Geodude in the Ravage Path, which doesn't necessarily boost my confidence either. Not to mention, without a fishing rod, there's no encounter for me to get on Route 218 for the time being. So after training up Geodude and Burmy to the rest of the team, it's time for our second Barry fight. He leads off with Starly. I do the same and immediately begin with Quick Attack, laying into him for around 70% damage with a crit on turn 1 as he goes for Tackle. And since the damage modifiers are quite wonky in these bootleg games, this somehow has Quick Attack not KO with a non-crit, forcing me to take another Tackle as a third Quick Attack finishes him off, leaving just Piplup. Tackle does 5 damage to Starly as I'm able to go for Quick Attack again, though with the pitiful damage it's doing along with a follow-up critical Tackle, taking Starly all the way to only 3 HP, second Quick Attack is connect before I'm forced to swap into Bidoof and start the Tackle off. While normally I'd come out on top with Stab, Stab doesn't actually exist in this game as it's doing pitiful damage, all while Piplup once again gets a critical that does over half to Bidoof. Huh, I'm curious if this game has them at a 1 in 16 frequency like normal or if it's higher, because that's pretty frequent right now. Alas, I'm able to swap into Kricketune and finish it off with a Fury Cutter, winning me the fight. Didn't expect that fight to need 3 Pokemon, but I guess that's what the full team is for. Speaking of which, I'm able to pick up a great new Pokemon here on Route 203 in Abra. You gotta love the bootlegs for not having teleport function properly, so it's an easy catch, replacing Burmy since there's no way I'm ever using that useless thing for longer than necessary. The Orberg Gate also houses a decent new encounter in Zubat, but once again, it just doesn't cover that major gaping hole in the team for Rourke. Pretty sad too, considering Psyduck was my second encounter in here, and that could have turned the tides. Moving into Orberg City though, we have 2 more available encounters, with the Orberg Mine giving me Onix, which is at least something that can stand up to the offensive pressure of Brock by resisting, as well as Route 207 having nothing. They did not put grass before the bike trail that would lead up to Route 206 and Mount Coronet, though that has actually been replaced by a portion for Rock Climb. I guess that's a neat way to replace it if you don't want to program the bike, but that means we're gonna be waiting until after the 7th gym to take advantage of that shortcut. Super inconvenient, especially in a game without Fly. Also, hilariously, in the Orberg Mine before I chased Rourke back to his gym, I somehow found myself a wild Granados. Jeez, what I wouldn't give to use this instead of Onix for this run, but I suppose they needed to put it somewhere if the underground doesn't exist, so I'm sure Shieldon is probably in here somewhere as well. But with one grind under our belt, it's time for Rourke. We both lead Geodude as I go for Mud Slap, all while he doesn't do much with Tackle, allowing me to hit 4 of them, including a critical hit to KO with over half HP remaining, leading to Onix second. Now his tackles are doing a bit more than Geodude's, but Mud Slap is still able to put in work for 2 turns before a critical tackle brings Geodude to 7 HP, leaving him in crit range. I've got a swap here, going for Staravia and dodging an attack, all while laying in with Aerial Ace. Not sure why it has learned this move so early, but hey, I'll take it. Luckily, Onix doesn't seem to attack with any rock moves, so I'm just able to hit for a few turns, only taking about a quarter of Staravia's HP and damage before taking it down and leave just Granados. And now, for some reason, this Granados just does not have a single attacking move from my knowledge. It just kept going for... I didn't even bother looking up a translation since it had 0 impact to the battle, seeing as I just laid in with Aerial Ace for several turns until it went down with no repercussions. If it did have an attacking move, well, then I certainly got lucky since most of the team is weak to rock at this point in time, but a Deathless Gym battle is nothing to be disappointed by. With Rourke finished up, we're able to head back to Jubilife and head north, taking out the Galactic Grunts and evolving Monferno into Infernape at level 15. Okay? I mean, I'll take it, but that really buff stat boost this early on? Really? I had Monferno for a single level. I'm just kind of baffled at this choice. I understand it's supposed to be a cash grab, but I still expect a certain level of quality considering how good the game looks and plays for the NES, but what can you do? Anyway, there's not much else aside from an encounter in the Valley Windworks to grab, that being Baniri before running through the remainder of Mars's Goon Squad and preparing for that fight. God, that was a terrible choice of words. Recently, thanks to MBT, I learned what gooning is, and sometimes the things I learned from his Twitter Freak stream segments make me want to leave the internet forever. But that's a story for another video. Mars is leading off with Zubat as I've grinded up to level 18 for the fight, leading Graveler since, once again, evolution levels have been changed and I've got an overpowered Pokemon for this early in the game, one-shotting it with Rock Throw as Purugly comes in second. Rock Throw still does amazing damage, though she's able to keep up and bring Graveler down to 10 HP. But thanks to a missed attack halfway through, I'm able to hit 3 Rock Throws to get the KO and win in short order. Single-handedly taking out Zubat and Purugly is a pretty good marker for how good of a team member you are at this point in time, but I can't say I'm surprised, since theoretically I would have had to been over-leveled to get this normally. Route 205 gives me a new encounter in Buizel, a nice water type to have, but of course a little too late for when I truly would have wanted it. But hey, I have a nice squad for Gardenia, so after running into Herturna Forest without Cheryl even in existence, and grabbing my encounter in Dustox, I'm good to grind up and take her on. She leads with Turtwig, so I go with Staravia and immediately just start laying in with Aerial Ace, doing over half as she goes for Poison Powder, which does some damage to Staravia in between turns, but it doesn't matter as the second KOs, bringing in Cherubi only to fall to the same attack in one turn, leaving just Roserade. Somehow though, I saw that the move missed, which made me realize that it's not Aerial Ace, it's Air Slash, but with Aerial Ace's number of power points. Whoopsie. Well, all good though, as I still am able to hit 2 more as Roserade attacks twice, hitting Staravia down to just 20 HP with the poison damage, so I just swapped into Infernape and finished it off with 2 Embers, winning the fight, and realizing that my intuition is not exactly the best to rely on here. Maybe I should bust out the translator, just to make sure I know exactly what I'm looking at, rather than working off numbers that I'd normally be used to. Then again, upon second review, Air Slash does in fact have 20 power points in Generations 4 and 5, but was reduced to 15 in Gen 6 and beyond, so shows what I know. Well, that just leaves Jupiter as my last order of business inside of Eterna City, and she's pretty easily handled thanks to Kadabra taking out Zubat in one shot with Psybeam, leading to Skuntank. Now, since I'm still unsure if the typings and everything are functioning like normal, I stay in and try using Psybeam, and sure enough, it has that dark typing. Never gonna be too sure with the bootleg you've never played before, but it seems like Skuntank doesn't have a single attacking move either, as Infernape's able to come in and just lay in over and over again with Ember without taking a single point of damage, taking it down in around a half dozen turns to win the fight. Really not sure why this AI either isn't capable of using attacking moves, or just doesn't have them for some inexplicable reason. Here's hoping that's not a continuing trend in the later fights, since I do want at least a semblance of challenge here. Now for Route 206, the cycling road has been completely removed and just keeps the underside all without Wayward Cave. So I guess that works if you wanted to cut content, but the wild Pokemon consisting of an underleveled Machoke as my encounter is quite strange. Once again, I'm here with underleveled but powerful Pokemon to add to the arsenal, but I do already have Infernape, so I don't really need to bother for the time being. And since we got Machoke on Route 206, Route 207's Machop encounter is no longer a worry, as that's considered Dupe's Claws, letting me grab a backup fire type in Ponyta as my encounter. Dope, can't really be mad about that one. But what's weird is Mount Coronet's encounters, and they're really high level. I mean, even for the base area, it's already in the early to mid 30s. That's pretty damn high. Though I guess with them all being dupes of stuff I already have or evolved forms of, I don't really have to worry about burning an encounter here and accidentally losing a Pokemon because of it. Oh, and for some reason Cyrus didn't show up. Odd, I suppose, but I guess that's just something they forgot to put in. So it's an easy move over into Hearthome City, looking into the contest hall for Fantina, but she's also not here, nor is Joanna, so I'm very confused. In fact, the little interaction with the girl at the entrance and the Baniri is also not here. I can at least go into the gym, so maybe they just didn't program those bits. But once I realized that every time I go through any of the 3 doors of the first room, they send me back to the entrance of the gym, not allowing me to proceed. Am I stuck? Like, did some trigger just not happen and I'm not able to continue? If so, that's gonna be a pretty short and uninteresting video. I guess I could go get my Route 209 encounter for the time being, so I grabbed myself a Ghastly, which is a nice addition to the team if I can even go forward. So I just start testing anything and everything while moving back through the entire game, and oddly enough, some of the rock climb spots work despite me not having beat the gym for it yet. Huh, well, I guess that means I can get a new encounter, since on the outside area of Mount Coronet I can find Combee, and since genders aren't in the game, I don't have to worry about this one being a useless one, so Vespiquen will eventually be a nice addition to the team once the level cap allows for me to add it to the squad. But this doesn't fix my issue of being able to progress, so I went through literally the entire game to every NPC available to make sure I didn't miss a trigger. And sure enough, turns out I just forgot to talk to this stupid bicycle shop owner and get things to continue. Though admittedly, I didn't think it really mattered, because in the slightest, considering the bike doesn't actually exist in the game. But hey, at least I know if I don't trigger something, I gotta go back or else I can't move forward. Either way, with all that handled, the Cyrus interaction in Mount Coronet, the little Baniri interaction, and the contest hall bit with Joanna and Fantina are all able to trigger, and of course contests don't work, so I guess no fun side events for me. But hey, I can at least take on the gym now. Fantina leads off with Ghastly, so I go with Kadabra and one-shot it with Psybeam, doing the same to the follow-up Haunter, leaving just Miss Magius. I think this pretty much confirms that we're working off of the original Diamond and Pearl decks, since she's normally having a Duskull at the beginning of this fight, but not a big deal, we still have a big bad Mismagius to deal with. I swap into Infernape only to be met by a critical Confusion for a little under half, so I stay in and go for Flame Wheel, doing a little under half as Confusion hits me down into crit range, so I again swap into Barrel for my immunity even though it has Confusion. But two of them does a little under half, so I can't do much other than a few rollouts that bring it to around 15%, though since the last Confusion only did 18 damage and I have 22 HP remaining, I'm willing to stay in on a potential critical hit, dodging next turn to deliver rollout to bring it to literally 1 HP, and KOing next turn following yet another whiffed attack to win the fight. Whew, I've been relieved of progression, and I made it through the Mismagius without a death, so I think we're hitting a good stride now. Back to Route 209 I go, and sure enough, once I cross the previously blocked bridge, it's time for our next Barry fight. He's pretty much the simplest fight imaginable thanks to his Pokemon being pretty weak in comparison to mine, allowing me to hit his lead Staravia with two of Infernape's Flame Wheels through a super effective flying attack, doing around half as I KO and lead into Rapidash. That's a pretty easy pivot into Graveler, who takes an Ember with ease, then hits a Rock Throw that brings Rapidash to just 1 HP, so of course we take a second one as Tackle delivers the KO, getting Graveler to learn Dig in the process as Prinplup enters third. Now it's out to Barrel for our water resistance, taking attacks like nobody's business as Takedown lays in pretty heavy damage despite the level disadvantage, KOing in 4 shots as we only take around half damage, leaving just Roselia to come in last. I swap into Infernape here since we still have over half HP, taking no damage at all while rolling out 2 Flame Wheels to KO and win. Easy enough. There really isn't much in terms of interest on our way up though, just a lack of the Lost Tower on Route 209, a lack of the Salacion Ruins in Salacion Town as well as the Daycare, and Routes 210 and 215 have new encounters for me in Roselia and Bronzor respectively, letting me enter Veilstone City and get my bearings for the next gym, with the puzzle being a bit irritating in comparison to the normal slider or punching bag puzzle, instead having to line up tiles on the wall to defeat each trainer before being able to proceed into Maylene's chamber for her fight. However, we aren't quite at the level cap for her yet, so I ventured down into Route 214 just to take out those trainers as well as get a new encounter in Pachirisu, a much needed electric type ahead of Crasher Wake, though I held off on Route 213 for the time being. Instead, I just went back to Route 215 for grinding, testing my Combee out since now that it's one level below the level cap, I wanted to see if it would evolve into Vespiquen at level 32, and it didn't. Well, not using this for even longer, I suppose. All good though, as I've now added Bronzor to the team, evolving into Bronzong just before the level cap, so I'm set to go with 2 Psychic types and a Flying type to take out Maylene's fighting types, all while having Infernape set to go in case that Lucario ends up being troublesome. She leads off with Meditite, so I go with my newly evolved Alakazam and blast it out of existence with Psychic in 1 shot, leading to Machoke who crumples under the same weight, leaving just Heracross? I mean, that's an actually really neat team member to include, but over Lucario? I guess. Psychic doesn't quite one-shot, but it doesn't do enough damage on the Crackback, allowing for the second Psychic to KO and net me the win. That's really odd. I would have expected the developers to not cut Lucario, considering how prominent of a Pokemon it is in Gen 4. But I guess considering they've cut a ton of side content, I wouldn't be surprised if Iron Island and therefore the whole interaction with Riley and getting the Riolu egg doesn't exist either, so they may as well. One galactic battle later, and I'm set to head south to Route 214, though oddly enough I can head over to Route 218 without being blocked off for a short bit, with some grass available first thing. Huh, well I guess I can check the encounters here, and sure enough, Luxio is here and I'm able to capture it to make up for that lost Shinx much earlier in the run. Mind you, it's over Wake's level cap, so it doesn't matter, but I'll at least have it for team diversity and building potentially for the Elite Four. Route 213 is just the other way, housing a new encounter in Shellos, another wonderful add to my already loaded box, and right around the corner is Pastoria City, though with no west exit to Route 212. I probably should have mentioned that there wasn't an exit south of Hearthome City earlier either, so I can't say I'm surprised that the whole area was cut. Seeing as even the best bootleg we've played so far in Yellow version, they cut the entirety of Routes 16 through 18, seeing this much optional content removed for ease of development makes sense. But taking away my encounters is very frustrating, especially when one of them would have potentially been Gibble in Wayward Cave, but I digress. We'll hopefully find that in Victory Road or something. Before being able to enter the gym though, we have another rival fight and he's rocking a lead Staravia as I once again go Alakazam, using Psychic for around 80% as he hits for just under half, but that's fine as a second Psychic KOs leading to Rapidash. Once again, that's an easy swap into our newly evolved Golem, letting me go for Dig, which does 80% in one turn rather than it being a 2-turn move, making it easy to take 2 Embers and KO with the second. Out comes Prinplup, so out to Bronzong I go for the water resistance, laying in with a whopping 5 Psychics, all while only taking 11 damage in return to KO, learning a new move that's likely useless in the process. Seriously, I cannot tell if any of these status moves actually do anything, so I've just been keeping offensive moves on my team. Though I will say, having 30 power points on Psychic is a little absurd, but it helps for grinding. Last out is Roselia, so I stay in and just go for 2 more Psychics, taking no damage in return to KO and win the fight. Good stuff. Now that the gym's open, I'm good to take on Crasher Wake. Well, after an ice puzzle. I guess the rising and falling water was too difficult for the NES hardware. Now it's time for Wake, and to be completely honest, I'm so lazy at this point that I don't feel like grinding to the level cap. I'm just gonna kill him, and kill him I shall. Gyarados is up first against Alakazam, and he's lacking Dark-type moves, so we're able to stay in with 4 Psychics, only taking a little less than half damage in the process to KO, leading to Floatzel. While I am at a 4-level deficit with Bronzong, I can still swap in for the resistance and just keep going for Psychic while he goes for presumably Brine, but he only hits twice for less than half damage, all while Psychic manages to get in there 4 times in a row for the KO, leaving just Golduck. Once again I'm seeing the lack of Platinum decks without Quagsire, but it's still good enough to do damage with Water Pulse as I get in 3 Psychics. But now I'm in KO range and it's time to swap again, this time back into Alakazam to finish it off with 1 more Psychic to take the win. Next time, I'm gonna have to suck it up and actually grind, though. The lack of trainers really makes it hard to do so. Just slaving away on wild Pokemon is really boring and sleep-inducing. And I suppose I have to do it to keep going. 1 bomb later, and I figured I'd just do this grind now. May as well get relatively on level for Byron after getting to level 38, leaving more than enough wiggle room for the trek through to Celestic Town. No encounters either, so it's straight into the Cyrus fight, leading Heracross as I go with Golem. I guess Heracross is the go-to strong Pokemon for this bootleg at the moment, and Sneasel and Weavile have been cut from this one. But I'm able to hit a Rock Slide for a little under half as he hits Brick Break for a little over half, so I swap into Alakazam to take it for under half, then fire back with Psychic to KO it, as well as the following Golbat to leave just Murkrow. From here, I just swap into Bronzong and start going for what I believe to be Flash Cannon, don't quote me on that. But that Steel typing's current help in making the Dark-type moves neutral is not helping enough, as Murkrow is able to pull Bronzong below a quarter as I have it at a sliver. But that's more than fine as I can simply bring in Staraptor to finish off with Wing Attack to win the fight. Wish I had led with that, would have made Heracross a lot simpler. But with that, I'm finally able to traverse the map again back to Jubilife, only to head west towards Canalave, and see a patch of grass right there next to the gate between Jubilife and Route 218 that wasn't there in the original Platinum, and it contains Shinx. You're telling me I could have gotten this way earlier. I guess I should have done a little bit more exploring instead of exclusively expecting the bootleg to keep things the same and remove an encounter that I'd normally get here in Magikarp, but I digress. Nothing else here that's not dupes, so I'm good to head into Canalave and into our second to last rival fight of the run. Hopefully, of course, fingers crossed that I don't wipe later. He leads with Staraptor as I go with Alakazam, immediately swapping out for Bronzong since I don't want to be wiped out by a physical attack here. Instead going out into Bronzong like I said, and taking a few air slashes for around half damage as Psychic barrages into the bird to KO, leading to Floatzel. Here we just go back and forth with Bronzong soaking up all of those water type attacks, coming out on top with 3 Psychics, surviving on just over a third HP as Rapidash enters third. Definitely not something I'm comfortable with staying in on though, so I swap over to Golem just to hit this thing with 2 Earthquakes to KO, glad I learned that move, as Heracross enters fourth. Finally, a Pokemon that's supposed to be on Barry's team! I decide to stay in as Golem has sky-high physical defense, so I can take a Brick Break or any fighting type move he decides to throw at me, and it manages to work up until the turn I should have KO'd Heracross due to the unfortunate miss with Rock Slide, being brought to around a quarter HP and forced to swap, in which I just go for Infernape, taking half damage upon entry and outspeeding to finish it off with Flame Wheel as the second to last Pokemon, Empoleon, enters and immediately dies to close combat from Staraptor after swapping. This leaves just... wait, nothing? Where's the Roselia? I mean, I guess I'll take it, but that's strange. Guess I miscounted how many Pokemon he had at the beginning. But with that, we're all set to take on Byron's gym, which is full of teleporters and the godforsaken ice puzzles. just to try to replicate the elevators that he would have had as best as possible. And since once again I'm too lazy to grind after having already done once so before this gym, I'd opt to just go in at around level 38 to 39, leading Infernape against Bronzong all while hitting 2 flamethrowers, one of which gets a crit to KO as he refuses to use a Psychic-type move, leading to Steelix. Of course, from here I swap into Staraptor on presumably Iron Tail so that I can use close combat. Thankfully, not having the drawback of lowering my defenses as a second gets the KO, leaving just Bastiodon to fall to a quad effect of close combat to seal the deal and give me my 6th of 8 gym badges. Really considering starting to shuffle up my team now though, since I would like to get some type advantages instead of continually being stubborn, since that's bound to bite me in the bum soon, but I think I can get away with fighting Candace first before doing so. One library visit and a large bomb later, and it's time for the lake visits. First up, darting all the way across the map back to Lake Valor is my first encounter with Saturn. And boy, this lake certainly does not look blown up in the slightest. I guess they couldn't figure out how to make a map change its look after certain story events. It's not really a big deal. Saturn, of course, is leading Golbat while I go with Golem. I had a feeling this would be here, so I can Rock Slide this thing twice to KO, leading to Bronzor. Again, pretty easy with the lack of abilities present in this game, so Earthquake wipes it out right quick, leaving just a Skuntank? Did someone mix up Jupiter and Saturn? I mean, I guess I haven't seen a Krogunk at all during this run, so I suppose that line's been cut? Very strange, but alas, I just Earthquake it to death and call it a trip, going all the way back to Lake Verity so that I can take on Mars. Once again, this is a Golbat lead, so Golem is more than enough to handle it, persisting attacks up the wazoo and only taking 8 damage as Rock Slide destroys her, doing the same with her Bronzong with Earthquake, leaving just Purugly. Again, our defenses are sky high, so we can just shrug off all normal type attacks, letting me lay in with 3 stab Earthquakes to KO and win the fight quickly. Well, at least that team was right. Would have been hilarious if they had given Mars Toxicroak and Jupiter Purugly, as if it was a ploy by Team Galactic to try to make you unprepared for their fights. But a bootleg would never be so smart as to do something funny like that. Anyway, with those 2 defeated, it's time for more walking, this time with me checking if I can use Rock Climb up on Route 207 for the shortcut to the correct Mount Coronet entrance. And holy smokes, I actually can! Of course, I'm still stupid and go into the wrong entrance, but I figured it out eventually and take the exit out towards Route 216, only to find out it's not Route 216. But in fact, it spits me right out at the Acuity Lakefront for the cutscene between Barry and Jupiter, with no way to surf on the water, no other exits, and no possible way to get to Snowpoint City. There's zero shot they cut an entire gym, right? I went scouring through Mount Coronet to see if there was an exit that would potentially lead me out, or if there was a bit of a clearing in Acuity Lakefront to attempt to get to Snowpoint City. There's nothing. I guess increase the level cap for Volkner? We can't do anything about it, other than grind up in preparation for the Galactic headquarters in Veilstone City. So after a stupidly long grind up to level 45, I'm able to run through the grunts inside of the HQ, of course making sure to hit all of them so I can get as much money and EXP as possible, since this game's lacking harshly in trainers, and I'm gonna need that cash to make sure I have healing items for the Pokemon League. Yeah, it's that bad. No TMs and no ways to get infinite money through any sort of grinding, and it's quite frustrating to say the least. But it's fine, as we're able to get through everybody and find Cyrus, conspicuously without a tunnel towards another Saturn fight after him. Well, I guess one boss fight is fine. He leads off with Skuntank. I go for Staraptor, and since I have close combat, I go for it for half damage, but then I remember, oh, right! The Skuntank has 0 attacking moves in this game, and just start going for weaker moves so I can conserve my power points in the event that I need them for the 2nd and 3rd Pokemon, KOing it with a barrage of Wing Attack and Air Slash, all while not taking damage, leading to Crobat. Okay, an actually good Pokemon, and one that walls up against Air Slash pretty well, even doing more damage per attack with Chatter. I suppose they gave this move to other flying types, since Chatot is nowhere to be seen in this bootleg, but considering he just decides to use Leer 3 times during this, which didn't have any significant impact on the amount of damage Crobat was doing to Staraptor, I'm able to clean it up with a few more Air Slashes to KO, leaving just Honchkrow. Well, I suppose I need to swap out from here, deciding to go for Bronzong for the neutrality thanks to the Steel typing, and repeatedly going for Bullet Punch. I mean, that's cool that Bronzong gets Bullet Punch here, Seems like a cool priority move, but priority doesn't exist in this bootleg. Instead, it's just here to have a steel-type move that does damage, and we're managing to just slightly outpace Honchkro's damage with Pursuit all the way until I accidentally misclicked Confusion, since somebody decided auto-placing the move cursor to your first move instead of the move used last was a good idea, forcing me to swap once again, this time choosing Golem because I'm dumb and I should have used this in the first place. Finally finishing it off with Rock Slide to KO, and lead to no Saturn fight as expected. Alright, well, I suppose I need to go to Mount Coronet and Spear Pillar, since there was still a path to get there before, only to realize that the path that was previously being blocked by Team Galactic is in fact a dead end, with no battle against Mars and Jupiter, no Distortion World, and no Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina. No wonder they took those off of the title screens, they're not even in the fucking game! In fact, there's only 92 Pokemon in this game, hence why stuff like Lucario, Weavile, Houndoom, Yanmega, Toxicroak, and many others have been cut from the original 210 seen in Platinum's regional decks. In fact, Bonsly is the last Pokemon in said Pokedex, meaning this thing doesn't even evolve into Sudowoodo in this game. For as much effort that was put into the rest of this game, the fact that the Pokedex isn't even 50% of Platinum's, not to mention with all of these story beats and optional areas cut, I've just got to say that this game is blatantly a cash grab, blatantly ass, and in fact, the Pokedex evolving Pokemon doesn't even count as obtaining them. I'm still missing Monferno, Infernape, and Alakazam inside of my Pokedex, despite the fact that I literally have them in my party, not to mention, if a Pokemon is caught above its normal evolution level, like Ghastly was, it cannot evolve. They did not program it to be able to evolve at or above the level that it normally evolves, meaning I am stuck with a potentially level 59 Ghastly going into the league if it doesn't die beforehand. You know what? Sound off in the comments below. If I ever decide to revisit these bootlegs for the Professor Oak's challenge, would you want me to do it normally and go for evolution levels while marking them as obtained, or go in spirit of the actual challenge and ignore anything that doesn't actually fill in an entry in the Pokedex as the challenge is actually supposed to entail? And all of that while dealing with the numerous encounters throughout Mount Coronet because they decided that programming repel items was too difficult, let alone any status that wasn't poison. Here's hoping that the multiple versions of Gold and Silver made by different developers are actually competent and not hot ass like this or Ruby and Sapphire. Anyway, I guess that means we're off to Sunyshore City, complete with only 2 trainers on Route 222. Great for my experience. Not to mention, there's no f***ing trainers in the gym except for Volkner himself. At least the gym puzzle is actually pretty cool, with the shapes and colors needing to be swapped around to open certain doors and let you get to the teleporter that brings you to the next room. I'll give them props for that, but not enough, because in comparison to the lack of trainers and ridiculous amounts of grinding needed to hit the level cap, since these base EXP yields are f***ing garbage, you know what? F*** this. Golem crushes Skull. Earthquake one-shots Volkner's lead Pachirisu, leading to Heracross, so I swap into Bronzong to hit Psychic, only to be hit by a critical Brick Break, so I swap once again into Staraptor to hit it with the newly learned Brave Bird, complete with no recoil, because games are hard to program and this team is less competent than the people behind Gen 1's Shoestring Spit and a Wish coding. Third out is Luxray, back out to Golem to hit it with 2 Earthquakes to KO, leaving just Medicham. I guess we needed to give Candace's Pokemon to somebody else, so I just swapped back into Staraptor to finish it off with 2 Brave Birds to win the fight. Well, Beacon Badge in hand, I suppose, considering I'm level 45, and the league is level 59 for the cap, I'm gonna want to grind up about 10 levels before running into the last rival battle at the very least. This grind, by the way, took hours to finish. It's nice to have the EXP yield on Route 222 at least be decent, but not all of my party can routinely take out Luxio, Floatzel, and the occasional Drifloon here, so I also had to use the mid-level 20s on Route 214. But hey, I got through it, my team is level 55, and thank God I did that before trying to go even slightly north of Sunyshore City's gym, because Barry is here to ambush us for the last fight way earlier than he should be. He's leading Staraptor as I go Bronzong, just going for Psychic here and taking barely any damage, as I'm able to 3-shot it, leading to Skuntank. I mean, sure, I guess. I swap to Golem here, only to hit it with a 1-shot Earthquake and not get hit at all because, oh boy, Skuntank doesn't have any attacking moves. This leads to Heracross third, so I swap once again into Staraptor, taking barely any damage before one-shotting with Brave Bird as Rapidash enters fourth, so it's back out to Golem to take 0 damage from 2 attacks as Earthquake gets the KO in one shot. Fifth out is Ambipom, an interesting member choice, but I just Earthquake it to death, leaving just Empoleon to do nothing, letting me swap from Golem back into Staraptor and close combating it to death to win the fight. And with that, we at least get the EXP from the trainers, like 12 levels below us on Route 223, leaving just the Victory Road. There is no Victory Road. It's just a waterfall that leads to the Pokemon League, meaning I have to grind again! Sure, it's only 4 more levels, but I just got done with 10 levels of grinding only to play the game for 10 minutes. And hey, I guess that means it's true to an NES RPG like Final Fantasy or Earthbound Beginnings. Surely that was intentional. I'm losing my goddamn mind. But one more grind later, and thankfully with enough money to grab plenty of ethers and super potions, since for some reason shops sell the former, but don't have any hyper potions, we're ready for the league. Sound off in the comments if you think I'm gonna lose a Pokemon in the league, or if you think we're gonna steamroll. Let's get it done. First up is Aaron, so I'm leading Staraptor to just Brave Bird him to death, taking out Beautifly, Mothim, Heracross, Combee for some f***ing reason, and Vespiquen in sequence, all to one-shot each to win the fight. They really didn't have a 5th bug type to give them? I mean, really? They had Dustox. I caught one in Eterna Forest, and I suppose we weren't supposed to think about that. Second up is Bertha, leading Whiscash as I'm once again leading Staraptor for the ground immunity, hitting 2 Brave Birds to KO with no damage as Steelix enters second, and immediately dies to close combat, leading to Gastrodon. Brave Bird is once again a one-shot as it is on her 4th Pokemon in Torterra, great use of the ground subtyping there, leaving just Golem to be 2-shot by close combat to single-handedly win a 2nd league battle. Hey, at least they had enough unique ground types for that fight. Anyway, third is Flint, and sure enough, with Golem at the lead, we're able to Earthquake both of his fire types in Rapidash and Infernape, leading to Lopunny third. 2 Earthquakes does the job there, leading to a Staraptor, which takes heavy damage from Rock Slide, but with close combat hitting us down to around 20%, I'm forced to swap into my own Staraptor, one that's thankfully faster, and after taking a close combat with about 30% remaining, I'm able to fire one right back at him to KO, leaving just Drifblim. I figure Infernape isn't going to get any reps in during this league if I don't try now, and sure enough, after swapping, 3 flamethrowers and barely any damage to Infernape later, and Flint's down for the count, leaving just Lucian and Cynthia. The former of those leads off with Chimecho as I actually bring in Ghastly, hitting Shadow Ball to KO both it and Chingling in one shot. Alright, why the f*** is Chingling on this team? At least the third out in Medicham makes sense, so I swap into Staraptor to KO it with Brave Bird, leading to Bronzor. Again, pre-evolutions. At least close combat wipes it out in 2 shots, leaving just Bronzong. Bro, we literally have Alakazam on our team! Why is this not on Lucian's team? Thankfully, our last 3 power points of close combat are enough to KO Bronzong without taking much damage from the likes of Psychic, winning the fight, but really making me question my sanity at this point. I guess because the Dex only has 4 Psychic types that they had to put a single pre-evolution on the team, but I would have at least put Golduck and Alakazam instead of Chingling and Bronzor, since at least the former has Psychic tendencies despite not having the typing, and Alakazam is an actual Psychic type that we just straight up pretended didn't exist. Anyway, let's wrap this up. Cynthia's ready for a fight, but once I realize she's leading with Cherubi, I realize that she's in fact not ready for a fight as I go with Staraptor. I honestly just led with this in case of the crazy phenomenon that I'm wrong about this Pokedex not being as short as it is. May as well be prepared for Spiritomb, but in fact we're just Brave Birding this thing to death. Second out is Bastiodon in easy close combat as Medicham's out third, being hit by Brave Bird to one-shot as Floatzel enters fourth, which is thankfully easily walled after swapping by Bronzong and easily KO'd with 4 Psychics, taking a barrage of water-type attacks that do knock us to around 25%, but nowhere near enough for me to worry about swapping until her 5th Pokemon in Vespiquen enters, in which I just swap for Infernape to hit it with 2 flamethrowers to KO, all while taking about a third of our HP and damage, leaving just Roserade to also go down to 2 flamethrowers, all while doing 0 damage to our starter, KOing to win us the fight, and a completely deathless run. I don't want to ever play this game again. Don't search this game out unless you want to have an extremely lackluster experience, or if you're a modder who's willing to ROM hack this game and make it actually interesting by A, fixing the Pokedex, C. Adding back the lost areas, and D. Giving it an English translation. I was really hoping this wouldn't be disappointing, but it was, and I sincerely hope that Gold and Silver finally gives me the experience that I've been chasing for again since we did Pokemon Yellow. That was an actually good bootleg, and despite the cutting of routes 16 to 18, the game actually functioned well, and had all of the Pokemon I expected, including the addition of the Johto and Hoenn box legendaries, despite the fact that I didn't show them in my video since that didn't come up in the hardcore Nuzlocke setting. Alas, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you can click on one of these other videos on screen, you'll likely enjoy them too. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.